That's CASSINGLES. Yeah, that's CASSINGLES. I don't know about you, but I had trouble like finding my community or my like group. I was literally like all the things. Like I tried out every one of the things. I was part like in middle school, I went through like the preppy stage and then went through like my hip hop stage. That was super fun where like the best thing ever was like borrowing my boyfriend's like a starter jacket.
Ah,
Oh, that was
oh,
everything,
the 90s and the
right?
starter jackets.
And then by the time I got into high school, I had found like Nirvana and I was definitely hitting like the grunge portion of my identity. And then that transformed into like goth, like
Oh my God.
all the
I
groups,
wish there were
right?
pictures, like real pictures of you
Oh, there are.
but like in each of these eras.
There are. I mean, if we
Okay.
went through all my stuff, we'd find them. But also, I'm sure my friends out there right now, if any of you are watching,
Oh, please,
oh
Cassingles
please,
at
or don't. I
cassinglespod.com.
mean, you could have
Please share them.
some grace, or you could share like I don't know the when we're like really good in a bikini
Then,
in high school. But I know that I struggled, and now that as an adult, finding community is so much more important to me.
yeah.
And I think our guest today really kind of embodies the spirit of community and um, I think our audience is really going to enjoy it. So I hope they enjoy our interview with Kevin Seconds as much as we enjoyed doing it. I'm Courtney Don,
I'm Chris Margolin.
and this is CASSINGLES.
Enjoy, guys.
Come
We sure
along,
did.
come along for the ride. It's gonna be wild. Can
Have a good one.
Can you guys hear me?
hear you now.
Yes, excellent. Good
How are you
morning.
doing? Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I was up all night trying to finish this weird Willie Nelson painting, and it was just drive me nuts. Drive me nuts. And
And
I went down to my little studio this morning. I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I kept thinking when I wake up and I go down and look at it, it's going to be way better than I imagined. And I still have a lot of work to do, but
I know that feeling.
yeah, I
we're
know it's
we're setting up a whole new art space in our house right now. So for
yeah.
Courtney, so we're definitely looking forward to the studio side of things.
But
But
currently, it looks like a hurricane that threw our whole house, and like one room just threw up in the other rooms.
we
Right.
we've
Yeah.
lived here. We've lived here for 10 years, but it currently looks like we're just moving in.
That's okay. I mean, I,
Beautiful
I,
chaos.
yeah, I like it. And it definitely is when things are too orderly, I that's when I start to feel a little crazy. Like
Yeah, you got to
something's
have a
off.
little something in the mix.
Yep.
Well,
I'm Courtney.
and I'm Chris, and thank you so much for hopping on Singles with us today.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
I'm 44, and I've been listening to you since I was, knee high. Um,
Thank you
I
very
I
much.
had fun parents who were really into good music, and friends who weren't afraid to kind of push the limits of what their parents would allow.
Right.
So I definitely grew up listening to some 7 Seconds along the way. So it's a lot of
Awesome.
fun. It's a lot of fun to have you on here because for us, well, we know the music. We always like to start way, way back, like childhood back. Um, so, you know, before you become the lead singer of 7 Seconds, if we go all the way back to like kindergarten, first grade, are you the overly rambunctious kid, or are you the studious, kid who's waiting for every lesson and listening to their teacher, or caught somewhere in between?
Just who are you as you're entering school?
That young, I was incredibly shy and um just I didn't have a sense yet of what like who I was sitting in a classroom with, what they were. Everything was just home and parents, and my little sister, and I don't even know if my brother was born at that time. But um yeah, everything seemed really just sort of safe at home. Elsewhere, it was, it was a mind-blowing thing. I was just telling a friend of mine, I remember getting home from first grade and I ran, at the bus stop up the street from our house, and I ran home and I went to go into the door and the door was locked, and my mom's car was gone. My dad was at work, and I just panicked. I thought, oh my God, this is the end of the world right here. And she was just behind, but I freaked out, and it's like, and I'm still doing that at 65. No.
We all
But
are
yeah,
in little ways, right?
yeah, but just such a little nub of nothingness, just inquisitive, I guess, and I wanted to learn. I liked when I sensed that I was picking up on something, and especially if a teacher or an adult praised me, I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing it all right.
Well, and with that, so where do you start in your journey to become, the writer and the mind that you became?
Um, the parents for sure. My parents divorced when I was 11, so I didn't have a super keen sense of who my dad was until much later, when I would ask questions to from my mom, and she would answer. And he was like, I think he was 20 years older than her. I think she was 20 when she had me, so she was young. And of the age, she was, UC Berkeley educated, grew up with music in her life, pretty liberal, progressive. She jumped on the hippie thing in the 60s. That was her. Oh, she was all about, Woodstock, everything. My dad was a cop and came from the Midwest, came from Iowa, and was the generation, he was a World War II veteran and a hero, and he went over to go. He was doing the right thing. He thought they were going over to take out the Nazis, which was pretty noble, but it fucked him up, and he came back. And back then they didn't really know how to deal with PTSD and all that stuff. They just would commit a lot of these veterans and put them in these like hospitals with just terrible conditions. And he was a working guy, so he just dealt with it the best he could. And later on, my mom would explain to him that he would go into the hospital regularly just to kind of get checked out. He'd spend a couple of days, and they'd analyze him and tell him, "Oh, you're okay. You're a tough guy. Here's some drugs." And he didn't want to take drugs, so he drank, and then that didn't work. So, but yeah, my mom, on the other hand, was very seemingly cultured and was always looking to learn about new things and experience new things. And when they divorced, my mom got she wanted custody. He didn't really fight for it. I think he was still kind of trying to deal with his own thing. And and then things got really bad. Single young mom raising three kids. Um, welfare, living in low income housing, um, pretty at times pretty harrowing, terrible environment, very predatory, especially when, guys, interested in my mom, and she's just trying to keep a roof over our heads and that kind of stuff. But all during that time, my mom was very keen on us having fun, and we'd travel a little bit, drive around, and try to see things. She was always taking us. We lived in Sacramento, where I live now, and she'd always drive to San Francisco and show us Gold Gate Park and the house that Jefferson Airplane used to live in, and just all this great stuff.
That's
Haight
amazing.
Ashbury. And I didn't realize how valuable that stuff was then. I loved it, but I didn't realize how important how it would impact me later on. And I also just loved that it made her happy. And so that was just, whatever brought joy in her life and peace, I was all about. So
Ah, love that.
but yeah, musical, very she was not only did she classically trained pianist, but she was a
Hmm.
great singer, and she loved music. I remember her just always going down to the Woolworths or Kmart or whatever and buy whatever was the top 10 vinyl 7-inch singles. She'd buy them and bring them home and play them on the hi-fi. And my dad was, I guess my dad, I mean, I remember him liking old country western music and stuff, which at the time I hated. I just hated. I can't even believe that I can say that I hated Johnny Cash when I was a kid, because I absolutely loved Johnny Cash. But she was into, everything. Beatles, Petulia Clark, Motown stuff. She listened to jazz. She listened to weird, exotic, like cocktail music, just strange. And again, I didn't really understand what it was that she got out of it, but the stuff that shined through was always like the real melodic stuff you could sing along with and stuff. So
Oh,
Beatles
that's
and
lovely.
yeah. Yeah, so
I love how even through her hardest times, she worked so hard to find those moments of joy with you and your siblings. That's such a
yeah,
lovely thing, and how impactful it was, and
for
how it
sure.
stayed with you. Um,
Yeah.
is there a song that you can think of that kind of takes you back to
Like
a
those
time or a
moments.
memory with your mom?
Oh, so many. I think it would have had to be she was always listening to like whatever was playing on the radio and becoming like whatever was a hit. Stuff like uh Mellow Yellow from Donovan and I said Petulia Clark downtown. I just remember her. She loved that. She loved that record and would just play it over and over again and sing to it. Um, and anything that the Beatles were like, I'm trying to think of what that when I was super, super young. I guess just like Hey Jude. I remember Hey Jude would come on the radio,
Hey
and
Jude.
yeah,
I love
and
that
I,
song.
well, I do too. But I hated it when I was a kid because it was just I didn't like radio would just overplay everything, and that was something that I grew to really detest as I got older. I was like, why does it have to be so regulated and formatted? Why can't they play more stuff? But yeah, a lot of my mom also got into like hard rock stuff, or
Hmm.
like Steppenwolf, Magic Carpet Ride, and um, I'm blanking out, but
So the real,
That's
she
okay.
loved,
basically, if it was on the Woodstock lineup, it was good to
yeah.
go.
Oh, absolutely. She went to go see Woodstock. My dad took her to go see Woodstock, and she came back. And I guess at the movie, she went to go see it when it was first run, and when, at the theater they were selling merch, and she came home with a calendar for each of us, a Woodstock calendar, and I'll never forget how excited I was because right on the cover were two naked people like in the creek, and I remember thinking, "Am I supposed to have this?" But everything she just wanted us to she just raved over the performances, Sly and the Family Stone and Joe Cocker and Richie Havens. And again, as a kid, it didn't really matter much to me, but I found myself, and I still do as an adult. Every once in a while, I'll watch Woodstock because I was trying to understand why it makes me feel so happy. I mean, bands were great, and the culture and the idea of these business guys that were looking to make a buck organizing with these guys in the hippie subculture who were connected somehow to music the music industry. um Decided, hey, let's try to pull this off, and they were just trying to make bucks off the hippies, and it ended up being this massive historical thing. But when I watch it now, I always think about my mom and how happy she was and how she was really trying to show us that maybe instinctively she knew that once we started going to school and getting caught up in that stuff, things were going to change, and we were going to be, indoctrinated maybe or influenced by fellow students or whatever. And she just wanted to make sure that we knew that there was a lot out there. So
Yeah, I love that. As a mom, you always want to show your kids that the world can be different and that there's something else out there. And I know just from listening to your music, I have a brain injury, and so I haven't been able to listen to music for a long time. And one of the things that we do is listen to music. I immerse myself in your music as part of the pod. It's the most
ah,
beautiful thing, and so it's like
thank you.
listening to it for just a whole new time for me. And your music is so inspiring, and it's everything that I
Thank you.
love. It's just like a gift of this, what the world could be and should look like. And
Thank you.
it like knowing your story. I'm a mom, and it's what I hope for my daughter,
Mhm.
and what I hope I'm teaching her in the experiences that I offer. And I always tell her, do all the things. Like when you're out
Yeah,
there, she went on a school trip to
yeah,
Disneyland, and she texted me that she was going to go on a ride that she really didn't want to do. She's always been scared of doing. And I was like, just do it, do all the things, try all the things, have
yeah,
all the
yeah.
fun, because I just want her to experience everything there is and know that what she imagines the world to be is what the world could be.
Right.
And it could be better than what
Yeah.
it is now. And that's, I feel
Hmm.
like the message I get from your music and what your mom was trying to instill in you and did. So I think that's
Yeah.
just so lovely. And thank you for sharing that about your mom. It just fills my heart with
Oh, of
such joy.
course. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think you're right. Anytime anybody asks me, what influenced the lyrics? How come you're so positive and da da da? I was like, I'm not all that positive. I'm pretty cynical. I'm pretty grumpy. Um, I don't stay grumpy for very long. I really try to work through that, especially as I get older, because I'm keen. I'm so mindful of the idea that anything that comes out of my mouth now that goes against something that somebody else thinks or says, it's it's fine if you just go, your opinion sucks. I don't care what you have to say. But when you say, oh, it's just Kev being grumpy, he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, it drives me fucking nuts. It's like, no, I'm not. It might not be what you like. You might not like what I'm saying, and you're entitled to that. But it's not just because I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. It's because this is how I feel, And um, yeah, it's. But I agree. It's like the idea that that when you're a kid, again, you don't. Everything is through TV or what you learn in school and what your parents kind of drop down on you, and um had I not had at least one parent that was like I remember I'd start to show an interest in sports, and my dad had wanted nothing to do with it. He just didn't care. He was a working guy. He didn't really follow sports. I would beg him to watch like baseball with me on TV, and he just didn't. He was just always probably worried about how the bills were going to be paid, and how he was going to deal with things. But my mom, bless her heart, she would take me to little league tryouts, and if things went wrong, she'd say, "Hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. Yeah, there are other things, there's other times, and my little brother, Steve Youth, the bass player of 7 Seconds, didn't get as much of that, and it sort of reflects in the way that he goes at things. He's a lot more like it. I got something to prove. I gotta. And he was the youngest, so maybe that had something to do with it as well. And I was the older, so maybe I got a lot of the whatever confidence I have or sense of self. Maybe that was all nurtured because of that. But yeah, yeah, it's
Well, then along the way from listening to Downtown and these songs, eventually, and obviously you said your mom gets into like Steppenwolf and things like that. So the electric guitars kind of creep into the environment. When's the
yeah.
first time that you decide that music is appealing to you and more than just listening?
It was that came about by listening to one album in particular, and sometimes I'm embarrassed to think this, but then again, I'm like, hey, um, Grand Funk Railroad, Mark Don and Mel.
Okay.
And
I
if you're
like it.
familiar, yeah,
I like
they
it.
Yes.
were, they were critics hated them. They had a
We had
huge
it in my
fan
house.
base. Yeah, I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's just my mom had an album that she got through Columbia House back when Columbia's had I think she actually paid for it, unlike me later in years, but she got that record and she loved like she loved like I guess it was considered sort of hard rock, but also there's the word boogie was attached to a lot of those bands, like maybe a bluesier kind of a thing. Hard rock you could dance to.
Yeah.
But my mom seemed to like
Uh-huh.
that. And Grand Funk Railroad, there was a song called Foot Stompin' Music, and I remember hearing it, and I just thought, what? This isn't the Beatles. This isn't like anything that I'd heard, and it was just so hard sounding and rocking. And so there's no there weren't even I didn't even have access to like rock magazines at the time. And certainly there was no internet. So how I learned more about Grand Funk Railroad, this hard rock band from Flint, Michigan. Um, and like I said, the critics hated them, but they sold out Shea Stadium. I think they broke a record of selling it out faster than the Beatles or something. It was
Wow.
just an insane thing. Um, but yeah, they were the first time I saw photos of Mark Farner, the guitar player singer, and he just had long hair and he bare chested and he looked like just a badass. And I thought, Donovan's cool, Dylan's cool, but uh, not
That's
this. It's
cooler.
not this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a rock star.
And Yeah, so that kind of got in me, and I had no se I really didn't even understand how what the difference is of an electric or an acoustic guitar, how many strings as opposed to four strings on a bass. I didn't know any of that, and I wanted to. So I would just bug anybody that I knew, anybody who knew somebody I knew that would show an interest. And eventually, yeah, I think I was probably I might have been about 12 when I thought, yeah, I want to do that. But by then I'm into Led Zeppelin, Stones, Led Zeppelin, all of those bands. So it was that era was just so and by then rock magazines were insane. Like Cream magazine was just the Cream even more so than Rolling Stone always seemed like it was for the adults. Cream
Hmm.
was just kind of s- sophomoric, and they had writers who are of course now considered like the Lester Bangs and guys like
Yeah.
that are legends, but they wrote about bands and made you um even if you never saw a photo of them or heard their music, they sold you on them, sold you on the whole idea mentality. Now in hindsight, we've come to understand there was a lot of shittiness going on, and just the bad behavior, but it always went back to the music and the records, and going to a live concert. That was first time I did that. I couldn't even believe I couldn't even understand it. I was so overwhelmed and happy.
Well,
Um, yeah,
well, when
so
you hit, because obviously 7 Seconds, starts early 80, what, 1980-ish.
yeah, 1980.
So where who are the mentors for you? Who are your friends who are bringing in this new sound to you?
Um,
Where do you come up with? I mean, where do you come up with the 7 second sound? I mean, there have been a few different sounds early on, but where do you kind of
yeah.
come up with that formula for yourself?
Well, when I first got into punk rock, it was we were my family was living in a motel room, and my mom and I were working in a McDonald's up the street, and we were just trying to get into an apartment. That was the idea. We were watching the TV, and a friend was over, and there was like some special on the punk rock invasion in England, and and how awful it was and violent, and they're showing people strangling each other on the dance floor and safety pins in their cheeks, and we were all just looking at each other like, what the hell is this? This isn't music. I didn't say that. I was going, this is interesting. What's going on over here? And the more I could hear the music, they weren't really focusing on how the band sound.
Hmm.
I remember Sex Pistols, and it had like "God Save the Queen," "She Ain't No Human Being," and could hear the music behind it, and it just sounded furious and good. And for some reason, I said to myself, I can't play what Jimmy Page is playing or dude from Aerosmith or whatever, but I think I can play that. I think that I can now. Same with the Ramones. So the Ramones and Sex Pistols really informed us as to in Clash. So once we got turned on to that stuff, it was just about collecting, getting records as much as we could, and then and just being in love with it. And when I started to try to put together, tried to put the band together. At the time, so we were living in Reno, Nevada, and there was just you couldn't find any information about that unless you just read rock magazines. And anybody I knew that I'd say, "Hey, do you like punk rock?" And they just either say "fuck you," no, or "what the hell is punk rock?" So I went to try to find musicians to play in a band with, and that was impossible. And then I finally just bugged my little brother Steve enough. I just said, "Look, you should play bass. I'll show you a couple things on the guitar, and then you do it on a bass." And so he, being the good little brother, and just kind of followed me around like a little kid. He was up for it. We did try to get my sister to play drums, but she had other things she wanted to do. So uh, now she's got an Instagram page, and she just decided to start playing drums, and
That's
it's
amazing.
it's wild. She just
Never too
plays
late
the
for the
like,
family band.
no, she's amazing. But yeah, that just took everything down to a level where it was just reasonable and it made sense and it was practical and there wasn't waste. There were, who needs wanky lead guitars and all this, overblown production? Like, just get it on the tape and make it make people feel something from it, and that was it. So, yeah, I kind of tossed all my old rock and roll records out of the. I just was like, I have no use for this anymore. I've got my Ramones and Dill's records, and but what was the question? I was that sort of
No, yeah,
That's
it
perfect.
was
okay.
the people who kind of led you in the direction toward that punk rock
Yeah,
sound.
Ramones, Clash, Sex Pistols, that early stuff. Generation X, we're a band that just were really melodic. Them and the Clash, I leaned into them because Clash were political, and it was the first time that I had a sense that, oh, you can take a stand politically through your music. And I was always pretty left wing, always because of my mom. But I was also very naive. I remember just being so dumb and so struck by the image of that and how much punk rock made me feel, that I just thought, oh, I guess, yeah, we have to go through this little thing where we have to shock society. I guess that's what we're supposed to do. And I think I tried to do that for a minute and realized I was horrible at it. I just
I
I didn't want
think a lot of us go
attention.
through that.
Well, some did do, and I always called my friends that were into, we'd go to the mall and they'd have like blue hair and then stuff all over and then shit all over their jacket, and then people would look at them and they'd say, "The fuck are you looking at? Why are you looking at me?" And it's just like, you want them to look at you. That's what you're doing this for. You see how I'm just like, I got a pair of jeans and I don't care if they look. I don't want them to look at me. I don't want any. But yeah, that stuff was really influential in it. I guess at the start of our thing, this is really pre what became sort of considered the classic hardcore era. Um, there wasn't nobody was calling anything hardcore. The first time we heard it was the band DOA from Canada came. We'd write letters to Joey and those guys when they were up in Vancouver, and we were always saying, "Hey, you please come down and play Reno," because we knew that they toured, but we had no idea how to put on a show, and we had no idea, like, what do you pay people, like, what how how do you find a place to do this? And not only were they just the most incredibly nice supportive group of people, but they I said, "Would you come down and play Reno?" And they said yes. And I said, "Really, what do we pay you?" And they said, "Can you pay us $300?" And I was like, "Sure." Yes. I figured I made that in a couple of weeks at my shitty job. At the very least I could pay them out of my own pocket. But they were the first band that sort of openly said, we're a hardcore rock and roll band. And because 7 Seconds were so, we just adored DOA, we just started calling ourselves a hardcore band. And I remember talking to Joey Shithead when they did come down, and he said, "Yeah, it's like a new wave of young bands, that are hardcore. There's us and you guys." And the minute he said "you guys," I was just like, "We've been blessed. We've been
Amazing.
verified or whatever." But yeah, that's kind of how it went. Later on, of course, everything from Sham 69, uh, Black Flag, Misfits, Minor Threat. I mean, I'm still influenced by. I'm a fan, so it's going to creep in. If I'm listening
Right.
to it enough and I'm passionate about it, chances are you're going to hear at least a little bit of it in there somewhere.
Well,
What's influencing you today? Like, what's on the table right now?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I have this conversation frequently where I people ask me, so what new stuff do you listen to? And I it's not that I don't listen to new stuff. It's just that I do, it's weird. We have access to music and things more than ever. Like, for free. Like, you don't even, if you're poor, you don't have to pay for it half the time. Well, maybe in one way you do, but like, you can get access to new upcoming things. You can find out about, the city they came from and the scene that they're a part of, and what they've done and what they don't do. But it's still, I still find it hard to find new stuff. Like, because I used to go into a record store, knowing, at least in Reno, that it was going to be really hard to find really cool underground punk rock music. They just didn't make money off of it, and they didn't understand it. Um, but I knew what I was looking for. I knew exactly what I was looking for. Like if you sounded like this band, this band, this band, that's I want to hear that. Um, but now it's just all it's everywhere. It's all over the place. And I have a niece, Frankie, who I think when she was younger, she always had she could sing. She had a nice voice. She'd always sing at Christmas, and it was very sweet. But it was like pop stuff, stuff that was whatever pop pop. And then in my mind, because I got to know her, I thought, boy, I could see her just once she hears punk rock, I could see her just falling, like diving right in it. And that's exactly what happened. She's sings in a couple bands now. She's great. She's like strong. She's fierce. She's like writes great lyrics. She's fearless, and she she talks a lot about new bands on her social media. So I'll kind of make notes. Okay, I'll check these guys out and see what they. If Frankie
Nice.
thinks they're good, they're probably pretty good. She also
It's
has a love for like the older stuff too. She's got a lot of respect in that. So she's a good egg.
That's a
it's
good
hard
resource.
it's hard to
Yeah.
finding new bands is so tricky because it's you watch the 10-second scroll, you try to hold on for the 10 seconds online, or but then
Yeah.
you lose it, or like we might talk about a band and they're like, did you save it, did you hit the like button on it, and then
Yeah.
you never find it again because it's
I know.
lost in the algorithm
It's almost
somewhere.
like
I know.
there's so many. I need curation. That was one of the nice things about like going into a record store was there were people to talk to. There was community
Yeah.
around it. There were
Yeah.
what you have with your niece, where there's somebody who you trust and you have that connection with who's helping kind of guide your hand. And then she's probably got the connection there with somebody else that's kind of helping. It's that like music store connection a little bit.
For sure. And she's so much more informed about what's happening. Like even the way bands book themselves, and the way that 7 Seconds, we just got back from a little 4-day East Coast run last weekend, and before we don't go out and play as often as we used to. We used to tour nonstop. It was just crazy. And we had a sense like, okay, this is how it's done. We sort of helped build this network. So we know what's happening. Boy, just getting on a plane, going out to a place where primarily it's younger people that are booking the show, and they've booked the low openers, and all the openers are like happening in their areas, and everybody kind of everybody you feel like everybody gets it but me. Everybody knows what's happening except us. Like, and I like it. It makes it fun and exciting, and I don't get. I'm not resentful. I'm not negative about it. There are moments where I'll hear something and go, "This is what everybody's talking about." Like, what am I missing? But I've always. I mean, the youth, the young people are always going to take everything over. It's their world now, and I'm not bitter about that. As long as you have a keen uh, lineage to history, and you're aware of it, and you can not follow uh, mistakes made and bad decisions made, and you can make it better. Bring it on. I think it's good, and I'm happy to step aside for a while and take naps more often. It's like it's okay.
Love
I
that.
love a good nap.
I
Well, that
Ugh,
actually
That's a good, yeah.
that takes us into I do with every one of our guests when I listen to your music, which is kind of one of my favorite parts before we come into our interview. I'm a former educator, and as I'm listening, excuse, our butter dog has joined our
that's okay.
interview. Um, I listen for kind of inspiration for a lesson that I might have used in the classroom or with any set of learners.
And luckily, since I'm still in the classroom, I get to bring my students songs from bands like 7 Seconds. So,
That's great. That's great.
And
Thank
whatever
you.
song kind of hits me with inspiration is the one I choose for the lesson. So, Best Friends is the one that I chose for this lesson. So I
Nice.
called this lesson All the Feels.
I will say it was a really hard choice because kept going back and forth between Walk Together, Rock Together, and Best
Mm,
Friends. And I don't think there's
okay.
much. I don't think there's you couldn't get more polar opposites.
So
Right.
you may have two on our Patreon because I really, one was kind of a political driven one, and then this one I fell in love with because it made me think of my grandma and a piece of literature
Uh,
that I really love. So this one was called All the Feels. So the purpose of the lesson would be to use a variety of texts, your song, and then this text called 11 by Sandra Cisneros, to identify and process different emotions and different emotional states. So the lesson I would start by having playing your song Best Friends, and then asking the learners to think about a time when they've felt any big feels. Big feelings is how I'd identify them. Um, that they hear about in the song, or they've had any experiences with a best friend. And then while the song's playing, I would model that in front of the classroom and just kind of jot about big feelings I've had, or feelings I've had, or times that I've processed those or talked about my feelings
right.
with my best friend. And then I would give them a copy of this story 11. And it's, I don't know if you've read it before, but she's talking about all of these times that she goes back and when she's 10 or 9 and feeling these different feelings at those different ages. And the reason I kind of paired those together is I think a lot of times we have all these big giant feelings as people, but we are not necessarily feeling them, or feeling them together. We
Mhm.
don't necessarily, as a community anymore, have space for like communal grief or emotion. And it's so important. And
Yeah.
your song really kind of hit home with that for me, of that full process of not just having joyous moments with best friend or community or family or whatever it is, but also the whole healing process. Um,
Yeah.
and going through it together and knowing that it's okay to be angry, upset, um, feel all the feels. There's a time and a place for all of them. And
Absolutely.
um, it's a beautiful thing to not just feel it by ourselves, but to feel it together,
Hmm.
because that's what community is.
Yep.
And having any kind of friend, it can look like a mom, a dad. Sometimes it's a tree or a flower or a bird in certain moments. Whatever that
Yep.
best friend needs to be and who holds us is perfectly fine. So having a piece of literature that they can walk through with that, and having the instructor, I go through how they would do that. And then at the end, having them create an image and just a 6 word poem.
And
I used,
we'll send this off to you in just a little bit here.
Okay.
I
Yes,
used,
please do.
yeah, I used a found word. It's 3 words from my grandmother that says love you bunches. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
It's just a
Wow.
balloon, and it will send it to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Okay.
says, Love
Great.
You Bunches in the Wind is my poem. And the Love You Bunches are 3 words from a card my grandmother sent me before she passed away. And then In the
Hmm.
Wind is from me, because that's how I picture her. Purple is her favorite color. So that's the image that I have of her. And the reason I chose that is just because it is an image that holds all of kind of my love for her and the grief I have at the same time, because I think
Yeah.
it's something that can do both. So that's kind of the
That's
lesson that
lovely. That's lovely.
I have.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Well, thank you so much for your music. It really just kind of encapsulates this full bodied experience of life for me and what is possible. And it was just such a joy to listen to it today. So it was just
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that.
And then
Means a lot.
we always like to end by asking, you have a fairly extensive catalog over the last, 40 odd years. But is there a song that you kind of keep coming back to of yours that you feel teaches a life lesson for future generations? You could probably, I mean, you probably could say quite a few.
Or would help inspire a change that you'd want to see in the world or leave people with.
Um, I think it's sort of hard to like, it's hard to see it from that angle sometimes. Like my thing is over the years when people stop it. Oh, my dog's mad because she's laying in the sun and she thinks I should be out there with her. Um, uh, I often say that the when I started to really feel like, okay, I think I'm good at putting words together and expressing what I'm trying to express. Um, and again, growing up the way I did, going from this sort of like fairly, you know, normal, typical family to like just incredibly impoverished and just sort of dangerous at times, and the sense of not knowing. I was coming into my own. I was becoming a person, but I also was like aware, very aware of um, keeping my head on a swivel and trying to help. I was the little man of the family. I was the oldest, and my mom needed help. My mom needed to, the minute I could work, I had to work. And I didn't want to work. I wanted to go have fun and meet girls and go, I wanted to do all the stuff that all people I knew did, but it just couldn't happen. And so as I became an adult and I started to have a better sense of myself as a musician, artist, whatever, it was really important to try and just be honest and open as much as possible. And it didn't always go over well. A lot of people thought these days it's like oversharing. It's like, well, you're your music rocks, but you don't. It's kind of TMI. You're talking about this, or you're having feelings about this or that. And I remember thinking, yeah, I guess maybe that is too much because I've thought that about people. I was like, maybe you shouldn't talk so much about that openly. But no, I think that you just do your thing and try not to be mindful of how it resonates with other people because that's when it drives you crazy. And so when people have come up through the years and said, this song really inspired me, of course I'm honored and I'm floored, but I don't have a good sense of how did our song do that? You know what I mean? Like what I mean, part of me is curious, but part of me is like, it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? Like I've had people tell me that song that you wrote that says this and this line, that meant more to me because I was this young kid who was going through this. And the lyrics really didn't have anything to do with how that kid took it. But what am I going to do? Say, oh, stop right there. You're way off base. Like it's, this is my experience. This isn't yours. Um, I think it's like art. You just have to let people see it how they're going to see it, and not let it bum you out if they didn't quite get what you were trying to put off there. There's obviously universal stuff like friendship and stuff, but I agree with you when you said the thing about community, and I think that when all said and done, it was always about me trying to find my community because as a kid, I had my little family and that was it. In high school, I didn't fit in anywhere. Even as an adult, I didn't really fit in anywhere. But with punk rock, hardcore, whatever, I could instantly find people that I could communicate with, and I didn't have to explain myself. Oh, well, here's what I'm about, and what are you about? Can we just kind of locked in, and we know it. Some people say, well, that's kind of like an exclusive little club, and it's kind of snobby, and it's like not when it's done right, not when it always should be inclusive, always, so I don't know that I answered your question, but
No,
I
you
think
answered it beautifully.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
just if I had a song one of our songs over the years has changed, but over the last few years we have a song called "Leave a Light On," which is the title track from our last album, and the album really didn't sell a lot. It just, it was, I think it was sort of not on the label. The label was great, but it wasn't on the right label for us.
Right.
And we were already at the other end of like touring our butts off to promote a record. We were like, oh, we got to do this again now. But now people have kids and we got dogs and cats and, mortgage or whatever. But the song itself was when I was writing it, I wrote it as an acoustic song, and I wanted it to be my song. I wanted it to be the song that I used on whatever next record I was going to do on my own. It was very deeply personal, and it just had. I had over the 2 years prior to that, I had lost like so many friends and people that I love and people that are very important in my life, as well as pets. Like we just had, there was a lot of death and a lot of mourning, and I was falling apart, and I said I have to figure out a way to like pat myself, like say it's going to be okay, buddy. You're good. This is just try and keep your feet on the ground and leave a light on for whoever's coming, walking into the dark the next time around. So I think that song to make it a quick, I think that song really has I find myself it's always there. I'm always thinking about it, and it always the beautiful melodies that are going on that my bandmates put into there always ring it in my head, and it's
Mm.
always a really sweet good thing.
I
Oh,
love that. And if I could say something, what I just heard from you after everything you just said was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You you said the sweetest thing about when people talk to you about your music that said so much about your heart. Um, when you don't correct people, especially for someone like me who I have a brain injury, so I fucking forget everything. And I at this point I can't rely on my brain. Even the things that I fucking know I know. That is the
I
most
get it.
graceful and kindest thing. And allowing people their own interpretation of something that I know that you've poured your heart and soul in, because I listened to so much of your music and I could hear the thread of just you throughout so much of it, um, is such a gift that you're giving your fans who clearly love you so much and have gotten so much from your music. And that's something not all artists are graceful enough to do. So that message alone, is so deep to who you are, I think. Um, and it speaks so much to that, how you just so gracefully summed it up in community. So I just want to give you all the flowers in the world for that and say
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
for that message, because
Oh, you're
I
welcome.
think that
Thank
just
you.
goes straight to your heart. And I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. And it
thank
has
you.
been so wonderful speaking to you and such an honor and
Absolutely.
just lovely.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I was happy to do it. I'm glad I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, you were
Thanks for listening and following along. We'll be back soon with more stories and songs. That's CASSINGLES. That's CASSINGLES. Yeah, that's CASSINGLES.